Brittni, welcome to Well Oiled Operations. Happy to have you today.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So before we dive in, I've got a lot of juicy questions I want to ask you. But before we dive in, could you quickly share what your business is and just give people a little background on you?
Absolutely. So I am an occupational therapist by trade, but I own an occupational speech and physical therapy practice. So we have those as our three core disciplines. So we have a lot of different specialty services within that, but we have three locations. Started out as just one and branched into three and continue to grow from there.
Amazing. What state are you in?
I'm in North Carolina.
Okay. Amazing. When did you start these?
So I actually bought a company that was already established. And
Okay.
so I came in actually as a student in the company and worked my way up, which is really cool that I've been able to be in every different position really within the company. So I started as a student in 2011, was an OT with the practice in 2012. And then around 2015 was approached by the owner of the company at that time about some opportunities to be able to expand into leadership. So I did some of that, mentored under her, and then co-partnered or co-ownered with her in 2018, and then bought out at 100% in 2019.
Amazing.
So yeah, at that point, we just had about from between 12 and 15 employees in one location.
Okay. So let's talk about the three locations in not that long of time. So what made you decide time to expand into number two?
Yeah. So, once I do not have a business degree. So, you don't learn a lot about this in OT school. So I've really been, learning.
And I have a business degree and you don't learn a lot in the business degree either. So don't worry.
Yeah. Okay, great. So it's been a lot of, once I got into it, I started diving into what numbers do I need to be looking at? What do we need to kind of improve on? Obviously over those few years of mentorship, I was already kind of like jumping at, there's different things that we might need to change. And so once we did that and we started to be a little more optimized, I started to see the only way we were going to be able to serve more clients was to expand. We were at that time completely maxed out of our space. So I couldn't add any more therapists and our wait list was just growing like crazy. So that was at the end of 2019. We really decided we needed to go ahead and expand.
How much were you working in the business at that time?
Oh gosh. So at that point, I started out wearing all the hats.
Yeah.
And so, going back, and I would love to, go back and look at my kind of org design at that point, and see kind of where we expanded. That would be a fun exercise, but I was doing a lot. I was also still in clinical treatment. So seeing clients plus trying to manage the business as well.
Do you do any of that today?
I do not.
Okay.
No client care at this point.
So how did we, because 2023, 2019, not anything too crazy. So can we go over how you were wearing all of the hats and then kind of started to strip certain things away? What did you strip first?
Yeah. So what I first started stripping was the marketing. So that is not my strong suit. So at that point we were, doing a lot of sending out mailers and that kind of stuff, but I didn't know a lot about social media marketing. I had an employee that really she had an interest in that area and she wanted some more work. And so she started to dabble in that. So I started to give her more of those pieces. So the marketing piece, and then kind of looked at some operational pieces. I knew I needed to be, handing off some of the payroll, actually paying the bills, those sorts of things. So it was a gradual process.
Okay. So one at a time, looking at your weakness first, deciding I don't like this, I'm not good at this, and go. Where are your main activities now? Like if I said to you, like, what are your top activities you personally do? What do you think those are?
Yeah. I spend a lot of time meeting with my team. So a lot of my high level employees, we're doing a lot of one-on-one meetings. We're doing a lot of, meeting with, marketing, meeting with operations, doing all those sorts of areas. I spend a lot of time in the numbers, reviewing the numbers, looking for trends. And then just trying to connect with the team, as we've grown, we have a lot of people. And so looking at how I can still maintain those connections, I try to do some of that. So it ends up being a lot of driving between locations, and a lot of times in meetings.
Okay. And how many employees do you think you were at in 2019?
Oh, 2019, we were definitely under 20.
Okay. And today?
Today we're bumping up on 70.
Wow. Crazy. Okay. I could go in a gazillion directions and do a million different podcasts on certain topics here. So I love the idea of you like stripping the hats. A lot of times second locations do not work. I cannot tell you how many people come into Well Oiled and the second location is draining the first location. They were not ready. They didn't understand you can't be in 3 places at one time. What did you learn? Like, obviously business is doing well now. Was it the right time for you to expand when you did?
I would still say yes. I will throw in the fact that our opening date was March 2020, or our planned opening date was March 2020.
Okay.
So we had a little bit of a wrench of the pandemic in there. But I will say that
you were essential, I assume.
Yes. Yeah. We still went to telehealth for a few months. So we were able to actually start seeing clients again around May of 2020. So, looking back on it though, I think we started out lean at that location because we knew we do not know what's happening. So we got the essentials. We builded, the caseloads as we went. And, I knew that I had to have other leaders leading in that location too. And
that's probably the biggest mistake is the people that add the second location are heavily involved in the day-to-day in location number 1 and somehow think they're going to do it twice and they just don't, they can't. And then they don't have the leaders and that's why it fails. Now, what's really interesting, as you said, we ran really lean because we just didn't know. And I think what I have seen of people that don't do well is they don't run lean. They have this $1 million business over here and they think we got to look like $1 million business over here.
Yeah.
So they don't run lean. They buy all the fancy stuff to have this impression, right? And I did this myself. The second location, we did all the fancy stuff, even though the first location was in the backyard for free for a while. So I think too, I want everybody to hear, yes, you said you ran lean because of the pandemic. I think in general, you just don't know what the second or third location is going to do. So running lean is such a smart idea. And I think your proactiveness probably really helped.
Yeah, very true. Because definitely going into the third location, we didn't go as lean. The third location, so that's, that is a really great point because we had more funding to be able to do it. So we really wanted to do that build out. And it has been more tricky because I think the expectations too of the teams kind of build off of that. The team that is used to kind of starting out with less and making do with what they have, it's a different kind of vibe than a team that starts out with all the bells and whistles.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. So when you opened up the second location in 2020, when did the third location happen?
So the third location, we opened as a satellite. We opened in a satellite space to start building a caseload in November of 2021. And then we opened officially, we opened our doors in February of 22.
Got it. I'm curious, and I'm not fishing for any answers, so go whatever way you want. Do you regret going not as lean in location number 3, or do you feel like it worked out?
I feel like it has worked out in the area that we are in. The third location was a cold shell that we went into and we got to design everything out. So we needed more, we really wanted it to look like our space. The second space was not freestanding. It was within a different office building. So we didn't have as many opportunities to kind of show who we were from the outside. So I think it definitely has worked out, but it has not been without struggle to make it that way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember when I built out whatever they tell you construction wise, it's always more, it always takes longer. And I was still very naive at that time. And I'm like, oh, they said it'll be ready in September and it's only this much money.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case. And I remember thinking we are running out of money and it was scary.
Yeah.
And what it does to your mindset, and then your mindset messes up your actions because you're getting stressed, you're getting nervous. So it's just things to think about as you're expanding.
Yeah, for sure.
Will you do more locations?
So at this point, I also have 3 kids. So I feel like 3 for me is kind of this comfortable number for right now. My kids are also still pretty young. They're all under 10. And so at this point, I feel really comfortable with the idea of having the 3 locations, not to say that we will never expand more, but also as far as overhead, what we've been doing more of is expansion of, we're looking at adding new disciplines. We're looking at, we have a satellite space within a school for next year. So we're going to be able to see clients within spaces that are already existing. So we're doing more of an expansion on the sense of expanding into the local community instead of opening another brick and mortar right now.
Okay. And I like that you bring up your personal situation, because that should play a part in it. Like if you're thinking we're comfortable, kids are little, high school's right around the corner, I do think we need to be thinking about what do we want for us personally? Is this the season I want to push? Or have I pushed enough and now I want to enjoy it, or whatever that looks like. So I think that's really good that you bring that up, because it's not just like, oh, you did the third, now comes the fourth.
Right.
Maybe not. And you can decide. People always said to me like, oh, will you have a third? And I always said, probably not, but you just never know what's to come and what's happening. And I think it's good to just like be in the present moment as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think then there's all that kind of like flashy object syndrome sometimes with, are you going to grow? Are you going to keep doing that? I do like that we found ways to grow without having to take on a lot of additional expenses. And yeah, you're right. I want to be able to, there are seasons of pushing, but there's also seasons of, I want to be able to get to all my locations within 20 minutes. And so while there are some really good opportunities for me to expand, 2 hours down the road, I know that I would, not that it would completely break me, but I would not be able to give my best self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even having that boundary of like 20 minutes is my max, at least for now, of like the driving time does add up. And if you have to still be in it physically, you want to be able to get there quick if you can. So I think that's a really smart move. You grew really fast. Tell me why, tell me like what happened, anything you can share of like you just kind of exploding.
Yeah. Yeah. So the growth was really fast, and even faster looking back on it than it even felt in the moment. Okay. So, that first expansion was really exciting. It was really ideal. I said we were going lean. We went into a space that was already functioning as a therapy practice. And, a story that, I feel like I will always tell as far as my business journey goes is that I met with my team in January of 2021, the whole team. And I said, we had a crazy year. We expanded during a pandemic. Yeah. We are coasting this year. We are optimizing what we've got in place. There's no expansion in the horizon. Like, let's take a big deep breath. Yeah. However, because of the pandemic, our wait lists were growing like crazy. Everyone needed services. I could not, as someone who is an Enneagram type 2, I want to help, I want to serve. We had the people to do that. I could not continue to see these lists growing, and we couldn't be able to serve within our existing buildings because our Cary clinic, our second clinic, was already full too. So I had to change my thinking a little bit, and I had to eat my words, and we had to make a change, and we did expand. So it was really fueled by the need of the community and wanting to be able to serve more kids.
Okay. I love this. So you publicly say to the team, we're not going to grow. And this is real. These are real things that we do that I love that you're sharing, because somebody's listening and thinking, wait, I can change my mind. I can do something I said I wasn't going to do. Yes, you can. Mm-hmm. So you publicly say, we're going to breathe. And even let's just pretend the other stuff didn't happen. Yeah. That conversation is crucial. Mm-hmm. I just had that conversation with somebody this past week who was thinking it wasn't stopping. And we put something into place to let her slow down. And she was like, thank you, because I was getting very overwhelmed. And all that leads to is somebody quitting or looking for another job, right? Anything. So having that conversation just gives everybody relief. Like, okay, we made it. We're there. We can celebrate what happened. You can share the vision. Now, it's not ideal to change the vision, but you absolutely can if you decide, if there's a reason. And just like you sold yourself on why you wanted to do it, then you go back and you sell them on why. So were they bought in to expanding as well when you brought it back up?
I had leaders on my team. My leader, who I knew was going to go and be the clinical manager at that new location, I mean, she was really bought in. We had a lot of enthusiasm around it.
Did you have to sell them, or were they bought in when you said, I think we should do this?
I did have to do a little bit of selling. Okay. For sure. Yeah, I think I did.
And again, this is why I love interviewing real people. Right. Yeah. Sometimes we say you got to get buy-in, and then it's like, but they didn't buy in. So now what do I do? And that's why I always talk about sales skills are for everybody in your organization. And whether you're in the sales role or not, you have to learn how to be a great salesman, because you have to convince people that this is a great idea and I'm on board and I believe it's going to work. So how did you recognize they weren't bought in? Did they just flat out tell you, or could you sense some like doubt?
I think I definitely sense some doubt. I think there's some broken trust there too. Whenever you've said we're not going to expand, and then like, oh, my thinking has changed on this. We actually are going to expand. So there was some of that. I think too, just the dynamic of me coming in as an owner. We still had a lot of people who, were with us whenever I was a student, or, just a practitioner with them. Right. And so all of a sudden we're coming in and we're feeling this change, and change is hard. And not everyone, when they started with the company, were signing up to work for a company that was going to be expanding at the rate that we were.
Yeah. Cause you're a very different business than you were when, even though you were involved in the business, it was still different than when it was 100% yours.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a good reminder. Change is very hard for most people. Like we like change. We thrive on like the throwing the new stuff, out, but most people don't.
Right.
So you have to really, and that's why the selling and getting that buy-in is so important, because they may not be ready for it. And did you have to part ways with anybody that just didn't want the new business model?
There were some people who decided, they wanted to move on. I think, again, because we were in the middle of the pandemic when a lot of this was happening, there were also people in the healthcare field that were just burnt out and left the field completely. So we definitely did lose some people who were just like, either this wasn't what I signed up for, or I'm leaving the field completely.
Yeah, that makes sense. And even us with the studios, it almost gave people the reason to say, this is the perfect time for me to just like to be done with this chapter of my life. So we had that, even not being in something like healthcare where we had to be there and everything. So that's interesting. How have you kept or maybe how has the company culture shifted from 20 to almost 70 employees? Like, how have you tried to keep it the same, or maybe evolve it on purpose?
Yeah. A lot of the biggest change for us has been through adding so many different roles in the company, adding leadership roles, people moving throughout them. I'm a big believer in internally promoting. And so being able to look at what soft skills do people have, what passions do people have around different things, and then giving them opportunities within the company for growth. So we've done a lot of that, which has also led to a lot of people similar to me. I still work with people where I was a student and they were a staff therapist. And at this point now I'm the owner.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that role transition that has happened. And so that happened for me. And I navigated that, going from therapist to clinical director to executive director and so on and so forth. And I've had to also, a lot of people in my company have gone through that too, and how roles evolve. There's a lot of rapid change that comes with that. I really love, you teach at one point about how, sometimes you break your own systems. And that is such a great illustration of exactly what we have gone through, is that we break some of our own systems. There's need for new roles. And then those people who were treating beside you in the therapy gym are now your direct supervisor.
Yeah.
So a lot of that has created some just new challenges that I didn't really anticipate.
Yeah. Especially when you grow so fast, people are like, I'm so confused. Why are we creating systems? Like they just keep changing, but you really do need them even in the temporary time. So what was something that did break, or like, how did you notice, I think this system is no longer working for where we're heading or what we're doing? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I think some of it came within, I would say within different positions and roles that we had. We would develop out a role. And while that particular role had specific functions at one point, we then needed to be able to split roles apart. So there might have been a role that was more covering HR and billing and, covering like front desk management. And now all of a sudden we need 3 people for that.
Yes.
So those systems definitely were broken. And, which again, when you're taking someone who's in a position and then having to split positions apart, and it creates new challenges, or I always say this is like a new challenge has entered the ring, right? Like this is a new thing that we can look at and figure out how to improve.
And sometimes they're like, wait a minute, why are you taking things away from me? What did I do wrong? And it's just, no, we're getting so big. You can't be HR and finance. Like we have to really have a few people in here. So we started this interview with you talking about how you were wearing all the hats and you had to start stripping.
Yeah.
And we're circling back. What happens is the people you started delegating to, they're wearing too many hats. And they, at some point, you break that model that worked well for you, right? Now, all of a sudden, you've outgrown it and they have to become the old you, right? The old Brittni who was stripping. Now they're stripping and saying, okay, like you said, 1 role turns into 3. So what are we going to have them keep on their plate? What are we going to have them delegate? Do you have any advice for somebody to even have that conversation of getting somebody on board of, hey, now is the time we do this?
Yeah. I love visuals and laying it all out. I love having everything designed out in our org structure and seeing these are all the roles and responsibilities. And we're actually at a place right now where we're in another wave of this, where we're looking at, these are all the essential functions of this role. Have we gotten kind of funky and where, maybe one person is doing a role that actually doesn't really fit under them? Do we need to shift pieces? And is there too much work there? And we need to be able to split off so that people can spend time in, being able to do really their highest level functions really well.
Yeah.
So I think,
how did you decide? Like, did you look at them and say, okay, she is definitely amazing in this, that's where she has to go? Did you ask, did you talk to them? Like, what did that look like?
So some of it is seeing and recognizing and helping people see kind of the strengths within that. I think people aren't necessarily used to being asked, like, what do you really love about your job and what do you wish you could hand off? But I do have those conversations because I want people to be passionate about what they're doing. We all have pieces of our job that we don't love doing and it just fits within our role and we have to do it. But by and large, if I can have something fit within someone's passions and what they're excited about, then absolutely that's a win-win for everyone. So it's kind of a combination.
Yeah. Right. I mean, if somebody picks something where you're thinking, no, you're actually not that good at that, but you don't want to say that. You're probably not asking, but sometimes you genuinely have somebody who's good at both roles.
Right.
And you would want them to go in their dream job. Right. So one of the things we were doing too is because we're growing fast and we are predicting we are going to continue to grow. And just like you're saying, we're just going to keep splitting and splitting and splitting. And I've even put the bug in the ear of, just so you know, at this many million, you probably have 2 to 3 positions with what you're doing. So I want you to start thinking like, which one do you like more? And then sometimes they'll say, oh, I can't ever imagine not being involved in both. And I'm like, I know, but at some point you got to pick. And I will say, when you've got this rock star who knows though they get to pick, it doesn't feel like you're taking something away because they're choosing their path. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. And I think, another element of that we've learned from is that sometimes we do identify there are roles that we need. So a position within our company is a clinical lead. So at one point we put out applications for clinical leads. We got a lot of applicants for clinical leads. And then we really started looking at this is the core functions of this position. And this person would be completely squashed by going into this role that is more looking at data, helping to build caseloads. This person is far too creative. And I think they're applying for this because they want growth in the company, but it's really probably not the best fit for them. So then we start looking at creatively, this person wants some leadership opportunities. How can we develop out a position for this person that can build to their strengths?
Yeah.
And it's such a relief for people too, to be like, oh my gosh, yes, you're right. I really don't love the numbers, but I would love to be able to do this instead. Yeah. So it's been really fun to see leaders evolve that way.
Yeah. We've had people apply for jobs that aren't a good fit, or they apply for jobs they don't even want, but they're like, I just feel like this would help with the company. I know I could do it. I'm like, no. Yeah. Please do not. They just want to help so much sometimes. So I think it's good for us to know their strengths and catch, do you really want this role? Let's talk why you want this role. And then you uncover, okay, they're an A player, like you said, and make a spot for them or create something that they would excel in. Amazing. Okay. So good. What is something you want to, maybe a mistake you've made or something you want to share? Just like a last piece of advice for somebody who is in it, they're in this business and they're listening to this podcast, just looking for maybe some motivation or just am I doing what I should be doing? Anything you can share.
Yeah, I think, coming into being an owner in a company that I had worked in, for me, I wanted to come in and be really well liked and received. And so I leaned in a little too hard to yes. I really wanted to make sure everyone was happy, that, I was, again, well received and I'm coming in and I'm here for you. And through that, once you get to that point of realizing all the yeses are not the best for the company, you have to really scope back and make some really critical decisions on, I still have the best interest of my employees and our clients and everything in play, but everything might not be a yes. And some of that is with changing your mind. I think that, like we talked about earlier, it's okay to have, this is kind of what we're thinking. And then you get new information and then things might have to change. And as long as you're communicating that and you are continuing to figure out ways to gain trust with your team, sometimes it's okay. Sometimes the no has to be there. And it doesn't mean that, you're a bad person or a bad owner. Everyone's going to hate you. It's really almost like that parenting philosophy too, of sometimes you just have to say no, and they might not understand at the moment, but eventually it's for the best of the group.
Yeah, I mean, we're naturally, a lot of us, just people pleasers, right? We want to be liked. We want to please them. We want to like say whatever they're looking for. But the bigger you get client wise and team wise, you will never please everybody. Right. And that's where you're just trying to avoid the inevitable. And I definitely went through that in the beginning stages too. And then I started to go, okay, let's just try to get the majority happy.
Right.
Get the biggest amount we can, right? I'm definitely not going to go with the minority and make everybody mad, but you really have to start making the best strategic decisions for the business. So I love that. Okay, Brittni, tell us where your locations are, what it's called, if anybody were to be local to you, if they wanted to check you out.
Yeah. So my business is called Emerge Pediatric Therapy. So we are located in Durham, Cary, and Carborough, North Carolina. Carborough is right outside of Chapel Hill, if you're more familiar with Chapel Hill. Yeah, we can be found. We have a website or on social media. So emergepediatrictherapy.com can really get you plugged into the right directions.
Amazing. Okay, Brittni, thank you for being here. I love just having these open conversations. Thank you for letting me take it in a bunch of different directions, but we appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you.